The Nike MC Trainer 3 versus the Reebok Nano Gym versus the Adidas Dropset Control Trainer. So all three of these shoes are what I would describe as more of like the core budget-friendly shoes from these bigger brands at the moment. So four major differences to note about these shoes include number one, their midsoles and how that's going to translate to their feel on the feet, but then also your training. So over here in the MC Trainer 3, we have a medium density EVA foam midsole. This is going to give you a nice blend of responsiveness and stability. So for example, this shoe doesn't feel overly uncomfortable if you're doing short jogs, some jumps, and then lifting up to like 405 pounds with the barbell. So for example, if you like to blend strength with some cross training and maybe some short interval runs and you're trying to save on your shoe purchase, the MC Trainer 3 and its midsole can do a pretty good job at accommodating that. In the Reebok Nano Gym, you have an IM EVA foam midsole. This foam midsole is going to be a little bit softer compared to the MC Trainer 3 and the Dropset Control. So this shoe will be a little bit more biased towards daily wear, classes, HIIT, and lighter strength training. And then additionally, the midsole up here in the forefoot moves a little bit better. So if you want a softer feel with your training shoe, if you're considering these three options, the Nano Gym will be your best bet there. And then with the Dropset Control, you have the repetitor foam that runs throughout the entirety of this shoe. It's a medium density feel like the MC Trainer 3, but it actually feels a little bit more stable, and because we have a lower stack in this shoe, when it comes to this model's feel with training, it is going to be a little bit more biased towards stability. So if you do a lot of strength training, but you also need a midsole that can be okay for plyos and some cross training and HIIT, this model can work really well. So that said, Nano Gym is going to be your softest, more plush model. MC Trainer 3 and Dropset Control are pretty neck and neck. MC Trainer 3 will have a slightly better bias towards cross training, whereas the Dropset Control is going to be a little bit better for lifting / some cross training. The second major difference to note is just their overall sizing and fit and how it's going to feel on your feet. In the MC Trainer 3, you have a fairly low volume upper construction. So if you have a high instep or a thicker foot, you would likely want to pass on this model and go with the Dropset Control or the Nano Gym. And then also you have a pretty aggressive taper up here through the forefoot. I have an E to double E width foot, and this shoe feels pretty snug on my feet. So if you have an exceptionally wider foot, you're going to want to look into the Dropset Control over the Nano Gym, because I'll talk about how this model also runs narrow in a second. But all that said, the MC Trainer 3 has a more athletic fit, very low profile feel on the foot. The Nano Gym also has a pretty aggressive taper up here through the forefoot. This is definitely going to be a shoe that's biased towards narrow, medium, and E width feet. And then when it comes to the upper volume, it is decent in this shoe. So if you do have custom orthotics or inserts, you can take out the insole in this shoe and put them in, and you might be better off, especially if you fall into that narrow and medium width foot camp. And then also with this shoe's fit and feel, the upper construction is the softest of these three. So the mesh upper in the shoe is a little bit more accommodating and stretches quicker than these two models. In the Dropset Control, you're going to have the widest construction. You do have a bit of a taper, but the base of the forefoot is objectively wider than the MC Trainer 3 and the Nano Gym. And then you also have a mesh upper that does a pretty good job at form fitting with the foot. Now, this model does not have a formal removable insole. It is held in with an adhesive. So you can take it out, but do tread lightly, because if you put an orthotic in, or if you want to put this insole back in, with that adhesive, it can always kind of have bumps and stuff. So I usually say just don't do that if you don't have to. But with this model, you are going to be limited there. So if you have an orthotic or an insert, you will want to probably go with the Nano Gym or maybe the MC Trainer 3 if it's a thin orthotic, because the Dropset Control, despite being the wider fitting shoe, it does not have that removable insole. The third major difference to note between these shoes is their upper constructions and how that's going to translate to breathability. So in the MC Trainer 3, you have a mesh upper that runs throughout. So this is a chain link mesh. You have a synthetic overlay up here in the forefoot, some synthetic overlays here at the midfoot, and then back here in the boot, you also have a chain link mesh and a bit of padding there to help give you additional lockdown. When it comes to overall breathability, the MC Trainer 3 does a fairly good job. It's pretty good in most climates. It's not going to be the most breathable model because, again, with budget shoes, you always generally sacrifice on breathability. That's what I've found with all my reviews. That's usually one of the first attributes to go. But when it comes to giving you nice lockdown and then just being okay for most climates, the MC Trainer 3 does a pretty good job with its mesh upper. In the Nano Gym, you also have a mesh upper, but it has a little bit more flex to it compared to the MC Trainer 3 and the Dropset Control. So if you want a shoe that's a bit more flexible in the upper and just a little bit more accommodating with wrapping the feet, so for example, if you like to wear a variety of socks and whatnot, you want a shoe that can have a good stretch to accommodate that, that would be something to consider with the Nano Gym in my opinion. You also have synthetic overlays in the midfoot, and then back here in the boot, you also have a padded mesh material that gives you additional lockdown. You also have a TPU overlay here, so if you do like a additional boot structure and heel structure in your shoes, that would be something to consider with the Nano Gym. But of these three, this model's upper is generally going to be the most flexible right out of the jump. In the Dropset Control, you also have a mesh upper with synthetic overlays over the forefoot, midfoot, and then back here in the heel as well. Now the thing with this model's upper is that of these three shoes, in my opinion, the Dropset Control gives you the best lockdown. So if you're doing a lot of lifting, plyos, etc., the Dropset Control can be an awesome option to go with. When it comes to breathability, it's kind of middle of the road. It's not super great, but honestly, this model doesn't feel overly hot in my opinion. The fourth major difference to note between these shoes is their weight and their heel to toe drops. Now, with these shoes, none of these companies really disclose them. Reebok recently removed the heel to toe drop for the Nano Gym on their page, which is really odd to me. But all that said, I'm going to kind of infer based off of how these feel and all the other reviews I have done, and I'll just talk about their weights in general. In the MC Trainer 3, the heel to toe drop to me feels to be around like 4 to 5 millimeters, similar to the Metcon model. It doesn't feel like you're overly pitched forward in the shoe, but there is definitely some, and there is a light toe spring in it. And when it comes to the weight of the shoe, this is going to be the lightest model up here, comparatively speaking. In the Reebok Nano Gym, you have a heel to toe drop of 8 millimeters. That is confirmed before they actually removed that spec on the product page. And when it comes to the weight, the Nano Gym is the most heavy. So you will want to consider that if you're doing a lot of athletic focused training and you want something that's super lightweight on the feet. In the Dropset Control, my hunch is that this model sits around like 4 to 6 millimeters, likely similar to the Dropset 3, which has a 6 millimeter drop. This shoe feels eerily similar to that. So that's what I would guess this shoe's drop sits at. And then when it comes to weight, this is going to be a little bit heavier than the MC Trainer 3, but not by much. So if you want a lighter weight shoe for your training, MC Trainer 3 and Dropset Control will be a better bet. The Nano Gym, the bulk kind of comes back here in the heel with all the stack height. But now let's quickly go over the performances of these shoes and which you should go with based on how you train. All right, so now let's quickly break down the performance of these shoes. If you're looking for a model primarily for strength training and lifting, which should you go with? The Dropset Control is going to be the best shoe up here for that ask. So if you're doing a lot of lifting and you want max stability, Dropset Control is going to be your go-to. The MC Trainer 3 can be a solid option as well. Just remember that it is going to have a higher stack height, has a little bit more toe spring comparatively to the Dropset Control, and when it comes to just overall stability and feel with heavier loads, the Dropset Control just feels a smidge better. The Nano Gym can work for lighter to moderate weights, but again, this is not going to be your best shoe for heavier strength work because it has a softer midsole and a super high drop, which can pitch you forward if you're doing things like deadlifts, RDLs, or things where you want a slightly flatter foot position. When it comes to cross training and HIIT, which should you go with? Honestly, this is where I feel like it's a toss-up because I really think it depends on how you are defining your cross training and HIIT and then also what you prefer. On paper, the Nano Gym can be a great option if you want the softest midsole possible and if your class or HIIT training involves a lot of forefoot work, so you need a little bit more of a pitch forward to get into different positions and feel comfortable while doing your movements. The MC Trainer 3 can also be a good option, and I define this shoe as being good for that person that wants a shoe for some athletic style workouts but also likes to lift on the side. That's where the MC Trainer 3 can feel really good and likes to do some short runs with that cross training and HIIT element. The Dropset Control, I feel like, is going to be the best shoe for the athlete. So if you're doing a lot of box jumps, broad jumps, a lot of plyos, a lot of side to side work, and then you like to lift, the Dropset Control is going to give you the best lateral lockdown, the best feel in the forefoot with giving you a lot of ground feedback without feeling too plush, and the best stability. So if you're looking for one of these for just your general cross training HIIT, that's how I'd break these down. When it comes to short runs, which is going to be best, MC Trainer 3 and the Nano Gym are going to be your best two options. Again, the Nano Gym will feel a little bit more plush, higher drop, so if you like to have a shoe with a higher drop for your short runs, Nano Gym would be your go-to. If you want a slightly lower drop, MC Trainer 3. Dropset Control can work for short sprints and whatnot, but because we do have this more blocky heel back here, it's not going to be the best for longer runs. So if you're running more than a mile, for example, at a time, you probably want to pass on the Dropset Control, especially if you're a heel striker. Now, when it comes to daily wear, which shoe can you just buy, go to the gym, and then run errands with and walk around in? Which is going to be best? All three of these shoes can work. Now, when it comes to just overall comfort and feel, the Nano Gym is going to be the softest. The MC Trainer 3 can also be okay, but with that lower volume upper, it might feel uncomfortable at times. And the Dropset Control is going to be the most dense. So if you want something that's a little bit more plush and it's a big ask for you, you may just want to limit the Dropset Control for gym and then get a different shoe for daily wear if you find that the heel is just a little bit too blocky for you. But honestly, I feel like that's going to be one of those plug and play situations. If you love the Dropset Control and you want to get it, don't necessarily stray away from it for daily wear, but you may just want to test it and see, okay, how does this feel compared to other shoes that are plusher that I might already prefer? All right, so now let's do a quick construction overview of these 3 shoes. So up here on the toe box, you have an extended outsole layer that comes up and helps give you additional protection and grip. It also seems to be pretty durable with its width on all of these models, so I wouldn't necessarily fret that detail. Looking at the upper of this shoe, you have mesh uppers used in all of these shoes. Over here in the Nike MC Trainer 3, you have a chain link mesh, and then you also have, again, some synthetic overlays on the forefoot and midfoot, and then back here in the boot, you do have a bit of structure here with this padded mesh. And then over here in the Nano Gym, you have a stretchier mesh and knit material. Again, it has a little bit more give to it. It's a little bit more ventilated. And then you have these synthetic overlays back here in the midfoot and boot to help give it additional structure and a little bit of additional weight there. In the Dropset Control, you also have a mesh that runs throughout. It is a little bit heavier regarding its layering compared to the MC Trainer 3 and the Nano Gym. And then you have synthetic overlays up here in the forefoot, midfoot, and then back here in the boot, you also have a padded mesh material. Looking at the midsoles, you have a repetitor foam in the Dropset Control. Again, it's a more medium density foam, but it does have good stability. You have a TPU overlay here on the lateral medial side for additional lockdown as well. In the Nano Gym, you have the IMEVA and then a TPU casing back here on the boot. And then this midsole is the most flexible of these 3. In the MC Trainer 3, you have a medium density foam that runs throughout and then an outsole layer that wraps up on the lateral side to help give you additional lockdown. Looking at the outsoles, you have a full rubber tread here on the MC Trainer 3 with some breaks up here in the forefoot. In the Nano Gym, you have a rubber tread that covers the forefoot and heel, and then you have some exposed foam right in the middle of the shoe. And then in the Dropset Control, you have a full rubber outsole as well with a cutout here with some exposed foam for some flexibility, even though it really doesn't add too much in my opinion. If you have additional questions on any of these shoes constructions, drop a comment down below. All right, guys, that wraps up this budget training showdown. If you have additional questions on the MC Trainer 3, Nano Gym, or Dropset Control, drop a comment down below on which you'd rather prefer. Again, the MC Trainer 3 is going to be great for anybody who does a little bit of strength training and wants a low profile shoe that can also work for cross training. The Nano Gym is going to be your softest bet. It's going to be best for HIIT classes and light strength training. And then the Dropset Control is going to be your best bet of these 3 for what I would call more serious training. So if you're getting heavier, if you're doing a lot of plyometrics and a lot of athletic style training, the Dropset Control will give you the best bang for your buck. If you have additional questions though, drop them down below or hit me up on Instagram, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one.